everyone, and happy birthday to my daughter at 11, who is turning 10 today, November 7th, 2020. It's around 1 o'clock. I'm out on the road driving to her birthday. I've got her gift ready. I've got her cool card made. And I will be spending today hanging around there, participating in the festivities of her birthday, of course, but also probably just hanging around a lot. I'll probably start reading the Dune series again, this time on my iPhone XS, I think it is. I'm just a few generations behind. Now with the iPhone 12 out, I'm starting to feel maybe I am on an old platform, but it feels so awesome. And Apple Care can be extended now directly through the phone by just going into settings and choosing some options. And I got so much I could talk about and would like to. On the professional front, with Python and JavaScript and Chrome automation, and on the personal front, with relationships and the awesomeness of certain media. I have recently binged The Last Airbender, Avatar The Last Airbender, with that, and wow, I am so surprised I haven't seen that whole thing through previously. I think I've done most of the first season, but it sort of piddled out because time in my life I was trying to do it. And so, I have recently turned 50, as my recent videos have, I guess, made a point of. And my daughter is turning 10, has turned 10 today. I already wished her a happy birthday early in the morning through text. And, yeah, this is real coming of age time. This is what all my reading and thinking about and trying to keep an open mind to what life is about, and my attraction to books like Ender's Game, which is Ender's coming of age story, and of course Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, more popularly known thanks to Disney as Alice in Wonderland, and of The Wizard of Oz, which is a remarkable series. The movie is spectacular, but the movie is a different kind of art, only roughly telling the same story, because the books move on to explore so many aspects of being a person in a resonates so well today, almost science fiction flavored tone to it, because these are the worlds that are absolutely becoming real through virtual reality as these massive online experiences become more convincing, heuristically accurate. There will be worlds like those envisioned in Rainbow's End, lack of possessive or plural possessive apostrophe, I do believe intentionally, by Werner Vinge, wherein real reality is important. Everyone agrees that, you know, the world we live in together, as objectively as exists, is the real world. However, there are all these layered over augmented realities using the real space as locations, but you could have superimposed realities that you could flick through, like the way you're flicking through screens on a mobile phone today. I tend to feel even that the UI experiences that were described in things like Rainbow's End in 2006 very much colored the almost transparent muscle memory mobile experience that's taking place today, that's making the mobile platform so much more of a, you know, part of human evolution, because extension of muscle memory like our fingers and arms and all now internalized tools that's extruded metal foam became. But it's happening in extruded metal foam on the outside of our bodies in the form of mostly the digital revolution, in a more general sense, the electronics revolution. But digital really does ratchet it up to another level by breaking seemingly real information down into bits and encoding those bits on different substrates and media, which themselves can be processing components optionally. It can be long-term storage, and different computer designs get invoked, like the von Neumann and the Harvard architectures, which have fundamentally different buses, the way things are connected together. But then in adopting a few of them to get the tech industry booted, we now understand that lots of distributed, often lower capability processors is the way to go for parallel processing. It's just so complex to think about that it takes a sort of machine learning in order to do quality software for machine learning. There is an inflection point. Some worry that it is the artificial intelligence singularity at which a computer is just creative enough to design a better version of itself by design. You turn the thing on, it interacts with all its input, it has some sense of memory, and then it has certain imperatives that are similar to life's imperatives, like to keep on going and get enough fuel and to ingest enough in order to heal wearing out parts, perchance to grow, especially if you're at the growth phase. That would probably be how these things would be manufactured. You'd pop out a new AI, which is kind of like a seed envisioned by another one of the Alice in Wonderland type stories, Diamond Age, recommended to me by Boris Zilberman, writer, comedian extraordinaire. Check him out. He was nearby as an observer in my life as I was undergoing some interesting transformations, and this would be on the professional front of things I have to talk about. As an SEO, you can only go so far. You either become a editorial content SEO, helping publishers on the web decide what to write about and how, so as to step into the path of the inevitable large numbers of search traffic being driven by the headlines and the state of the world. So tons of SEOs are jumping into the count this, count that. And this is a day that will live in, history. For more reasons than my daughter's 10-year-old birthday, for today we have a new President Joe Biden. Wow. I always liked this guy. I was a big fan of his when he was in the race, I guess alongside Obama and Hillary. Not in Hillary's last election, but in the one before that, where she was going for the Democratic nomination. And before Biden became Obama's running mate, he was running on his own. And I was like, hey, I like this guy. Yeah, sure, career politician, but he seems to be centrist and Democratic and experienced, lifetime politician who somehow was not reprehensible. So, of course, the world went with younger blood, newer ideas, and we had Obama for 8 years, and that was fairly divisive, but he got his second term. He's not going down in history as a one-termer. The world wanted 2 terms of Obama. That is very clearly remembered in my lifetime. But the wisdom I went to school having learned that incumbents almost always get reelected because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know has, in my recallable lifetime, been overthrown 3 times. First with Jimmy Carter, one-termer, Democratic side. Too soft on the oil embargo. Had a bunch of prisoners taken, I think, from the Iranian embassy. And there was a botched rescue mission. Woo, it was like a Bay of Pigs thing. So, just Carter was not very popular. And it was peacetime, I do believe. And so, when you botch something like that, international politics, although it was not war, I don't believe, it was pretty nasty with our ally in Iran. Was it the Shah was he assassinated, and then the Ayatollah took over, and Iran got radicalized right there, just like that. And in order to spite Jimmy Carter, the hostages were not let go until Reagan was elected, and then he became a popular two-term president. And then after him, I believe it was George Bush Sr. was elected. He was Reagan's vice president and a natural Republican candidate. And he had the first Gulf War in his first term, and he cleaned it up in like a nice 100-day war. One, disposed Saddam, liberated Kuwait, that was invaded by Iraq at the time, and it was nuts. We stepped in. We were the international police force. I believe it was led by a NATO coalition, and we kicked ass, storming Norman Schwarzkopf. And then we pulled out. And then Saddam's forces were able to reestablish themselves and lock down and make Iraq a really repressive government after we left. So we didn't free Iraq, we just freed Kuwait. And then it's the economy, stupid, which was Bush Sr.'s, I believe, one of his famous lines that got him the presidency. Blew up in his face because he became a one-termer, because everyone was thinking about the economy. And Clinton came into that, and Bill Clinton was a two-termer, so that's two Democrats and one Republican were two-termers. One Democrat and one Republican were one-termers. So it was split pretty even in my living experience. The midterm presidential election, it's not midterm, but you know, the second term presidential election could go to either candidate. I've seen it happen both ways, and it's so closely divided these days along, you know, what is being characterized by the types of folks who I listen to and respect the opinions of as revealing a normally quiet, great rift in our country between those who are either racist or in that neighborhood, isolationist, protectionist, America for America, who liked the ironically enough, democratic post-World War II New Deal, where, you know, everyone's pretty much guaranteed a factory job because of the ever-expanding economy. There might even be pensions, and those days going away is blamed on international competition, where trade agreements actually even often favor the foreign countries, and it drives manufacturing offshore. Ugh. And so, in order to kind of be the nice guy in the world, the global police, the United States has played very nice and allowed other countries to assume very protectionist trade practices, making them wealthy countries, driving more money into their economies and their governments, and less into the United States's. And Trump was tough on that, and it looked like he was on his way to being a two-termer. I would have completely put my money on Trump were it not for the pandemic. Now, I'll information, the intelligence that was coming in that something was happening, something big was going down. And then as the news was breaking, hanging out calmly in that children's classroom he was in, finishing up there, like things can wait. No, the president, Mr. President, things need your attention right now. You can walk away from these folks. They'll remember their place in history. You have no idea how serious this is until you've been briefed more extensively than it appears he had been by the time those clips appear of him continuing to read books to these children. So a couple of these bad judgment things clump up together, responsible for first, some 3,000 lives directly in the 9/11 attack, but then a lot of the follow-up lives because there aren't good targets in Afghanistan, where Osama bin Laden was presumed to be hanging out in the mountains, and there's just no good targets. They're all just nomads. It was very Dune, and it was very heady. Reading Dune to bring my head back, ironically enough, into reality, and to consider deeply what it is to be human and how easy it is to go on these deep animal evolutionary programs that are in our head, starting at like the pituitary gland, motivating us through basic fear and hunger and stuff like that, and then outwards through what was once called the limbic system or the reptile or lizard brain that gives us just enough to be like ambush predators. We can eat our way up the food chain by laying in wait and suddenly snatching things thanks to intelligence and a little bit of the ability to look at the situation, predict the future, have a little copy of the world running in your head, a little bit of abstract thinking. These lovely reptilian ambush predators. And then on up through the social mammalian brain, where after the stuff that got crushed between the lizard toes evolved into meerkat type things. They once were burrowing, nearly hairless mole type things, presumably somewhere between reptile and mammal. And these hairless mole type things got hair, poked up through the surface, and generally lived together, huddled together in sort of a colony for warmth. And there was even some convection where the ones who were cold on the outside of the pile would dig into the middle of the pile, and hence the emotional connection to touch and feeling, and the feeling of the hug, why the hug is so emotionally meaningful to humans and primates, and how it was necessary, that crushingness under the massive bodies, for warmth and survival in colony life in the underground tunnels and stuff. And then we became meerkat type things and social higher order thinkings, the outer wrinkly surface of the brain, but not quite, I believe, the prefrontal cortex, which is where human consciousness, what we think of as conscious thought, and this trick we do as humans that still is one of the things that makes us human. While true, other animals have language and they can pass things down through the generations, humans are several orders of magnitude more articulate. The ideas we have can be captured and encoded, mostly using the tool of language and writing and reading and writing, and hence the connection to all this desert stuff always making you more human, because you're plucked out of the trees as monkeys, you get put in harsh environments, and you come out something hairless and capable of higher order abstract thought, better prediction of the future, better ability to specialize as a function within a social unit of some 5 to 30 members than reptiles typically are. Although some reptiles can do it, birds flock, and they were down a dinosaur So flocking and packs and working together is certainly also reptilian and other animal types in nature, but it leading to the abstract thinking came through the primate line. So a lot of our experience is in common to many of the things on that primate line. And then this last mile, this last little differentiating bit, the stuff here that lets us plow through, a highway in, a combustion-powered metal box on wheels. And for that to fade into the background, it's the primary thing I'm doing, and I'm very alert of what's going down. In fact, slowing off as people change lanes in front of me to keep a sufficient stopping distance. I'm always unconsciously going 1,000, 2 1,000. And if I get to 2 1,000, by the time, the dotted line in the road that car was at reaches me, I slow down more, give it more space, because boy, have I had some lessons. So we have lessons, and we learn. When we learn and we piece things together, we modify our behaviors based on what we learn. This is something we do not consciously do until our coming of age stories, until our adventures in Wonderland and Oz. It takes a brain from somewhere between 6 years old to probably around 12, the late bloomers. Dorothy and Alice's ages, respectively, are close to them. I think 7 and 11. It was different in the movie. There were changes made, but young girls who mature faster think about these things earlier in life, and they have coming of age stories, but society generally protects them and isolates them from the same sort of rough and tumble of experiences that many boys are allowed to go through. Time away from home, living in some sort of summer camp, although the world is a lot more enlightened now, letting girls have these sorts of experiences, and becoming more of an egalitarian society, more accepting of choices and ways in life, which, leads to my leanings as Democrat. Who's anyone to say how anyone should live? This is the United States, and it was founded based on freedom of expression and religion and beliefs. So people are allowed to believe what they're allowed to believe. You can't begrudge those portions of the country who were brought up a certain way, who were handing down certain social programming that was ingrained into their minds by their parents and their local world, their local environments, beliefs that reinforce each other, the very natural human tendency to long for and look back on the good old days. We had some good old days brought to us economically, although people hate him for his socially regressive policies towards mental health and such. Ronald Reagan. Between Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, we have had some high times, some good old days to look back to, some strong economies, some world leader position. There are only 2 superpowers left. Oh, whoops, I guess there's only one. Woohoo, the United States won. The Cold War is over, and we're entering a new age. What is this age? Global competition. Every country can get in on the game. So trade policies really matter, and they take money and food out of the mouths and off the plates, out of the pockets and off the plates of lots of people who have memory of the good old days when it wasn't necessarily that way. It's the silent majority. The silent minority. Silent majority. These are Nixon's people we're talking about. These are the people who are not the popular folks, who don't make necessarily the really good money, who maybe didn't necessarily go to college. But there's still more of them in the country than there are the college elites, like me. I went to 4 years of college with a co-op. I feel I found a loophole, but a loophole for me was only 4 years of undergraduate college with the ability to continue working at Commodore computers, which I did through all 4 of those years. It was awesome. I got some good old days, but thankfully I moved to New York and broadened up and demmed up my mind. I supported Hillary on the previous election, 2016, and I supported Biden in this election. People all deserve to be treated equally. Everyone deserves an equal chance. The government can and should play safety net for those folks who are down on their luck through all kinds of unfortunate turns in life's circumstances that are often beyond their control. Shitty stuff happens to people. Now, this belief in self-reliance and carrying a big stick, speaking quietly and carrying a big stick, I think that was Teddy Roosevelt. I can see that, and being the world's police from time to time is fine, but we should probably also speak quietly. We don't have to use our position as the last remaining superpower, which is now being contested. Russia is polling Russia back together quite effectively, it seems, and quite determined. Ultimately, a larger tax base to draw from by keeping the previous Soviet Union territories from seceding with their own countries and identities and economic and cultural independence. Kind of tough. Putin is demonstrating his ability to, assert Russia's will. New kinds of missiles being designed. There's challenges to the mutually assured destruction of the Cold War's past, which locked things in a certain way. Civil wars can now be dragged out again. There can be hot spots on the planet. There can be genocide that can just be allowed to occur. So, every once in a while, the United States has to step up. It can't be isolationist. It has to take the moral high ground sometimes. Countries that don't abide at least by the golden rule in its most positive form, which ironically is negative. Do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. If your roles were reversed, make sure that anything you had done to them is stuff you'd be happy for them to have do to you. So that creates the rule of maximally tolerable reprehension. The most reprehensible you can get while still being tolerated. And that was what a test of this election, what this election was really a test of. Plenty of people could jump on the, what I believe is frankly less educated, flag-waving side of the debate. While yes, these protectionist and isolationist policies of Trump, and they weren't even isolationist. He, opened the communications with North Korea, right? It was Nixon who opened China. So these very people who get the reputation for and whose economic policies align with isolationists are also on the communications level, reaching right out to these folks and visiting each other. So it's, somewhat protectionist economic policies with formal communications at the leadership level. We can have countries that believe different things, and we can protect our economies, and we can still country club together. So that's what we had before COVID. However, now, the test of a president is not how things are done in ideal situations. They're how they handle things when it hits the fan. And I do not remember George Bush Jr. in fond terms, because when it hit the fan, he was like a deer in headlights in that classroom reading to the kids. And then he didn't act quickly and decisively enough, stopping air transportation, keeping, people who know what's going on here from getting away and to hunker down in their own, hideouts. And it seemed so far-fetched at the time that something like that could be that big, something whispered in his ear could be that big. But, big stuff happens, and you're the president, and when someone comes to tell you something like that, and it has the sound of emergency needs my full attention right now to it, you drop everything and you do it. It turns out, some 3,000 Americans and people in New York City were killed right there in the hours that followed. But then many, many more in Iraq for the Gulf War too, for the second Gulf War in my memorable history. I remember these things sometimes like they were yesterday, because there were no targets in Afghanistan. A lot more than 3,000 people were killed, in my opinion, needlessly in the second Gulf War. Iraq was liberated, but at what cost to human lives? There's better ways to do this. There's diplomacy. So I did not have that bad of a view of how Trump was doing pre-pandemic. But when the pandemic hit, it had the ring of that emergency to it. And the country can be motivated under, common enemy. What better common enemy than the abstract notion of a pandemic? He didn't even need a war to get a second term, because the first rule of getting a second term is to be involved in an act of war, so people's minds are not on the economy, stupid. So as soon as the pandemic started hitting, I was like, second term of Trump, that settles it, as long as he doesn't divide the country over this. And then he proceeded to divide the country. I was like, oh my God, how can someone who's handed such a gift on a platter, something to unify the country against, as if an act of war, without the deaths being blamed on you for deploying troops like they did in the second Gulf War, to a country that had good targets, weapons of mass destruction they claimed, none really found. Compliance probably occurred, and vengeful pride kept the Iraqi, government led by Saddam Hussein from fully, dropping their pants for inspection. At some point, they held their ground, and that was used as an excuse for all the lives that were subsequently lost to the, the Twin Towers event, to the second Gulf War. Oh my God. So maybe it's just that, lack of worldly experience. I want to call it stupidity. Republicans get struck with these paralyzing bouts of stupidity when it hits the fan. Had the United States not been divided over this pandemic, had it not been turned into a class versus class thing, than the vibrating edge, which this country is right now at, between the, vaguely but not quite racist red silent majority, because they're not really the majority. They lost now the public vote and the electoral college. So I do believe that means there's a mandate. They have both the public majority and they have the electoral college votes. All that has to be determined, and it might be determined already, I got to tune into the news a little bit more now, whether the Senate becomes Democratic or not. If the Republicans hold on to the Senate, they can throw the government into gridlock for the next 4 years. And even though the Democrats have won the presidency and likely the House, all legislation gets, broken down, chopped off at the Senate to keep things from becoming law, with the exception of certain things that can be done by presidential decree, which I'm sure Biden will use that tool more often because of the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. There's a lot of presidential mandates that can just be overthrown by the president, by the new president, Joe Biden. Wow. So the people who kept Bill Clinton in office so long, and then the people who kept Obama in office so long, asserted themselves and would no longer be tolerant of someone who broke down in times of great, need by this country. This country needs to heal. It really highlights a human divide that exists in worldviews, even under the same generally Western and generally Jewish or Christian worldviews that so prevails this country. Even within the same worldview, there is a split between optimists and pessimists. The pessimists are the ones who give elections such as would be this to the devil we know. By all, traditional wisdom, which I had already seen overthrown because incumbents lost in terms of Jimmy Carter and George Bush Sr. Before, and recently to me, memorable history. So common wisdom is already out the door. Incumbents don't necessarily have an advantage. But if you don't have a standing war, people's general dissatisfaction will allow the more abstract thinking and educated elite to get motivated to vote to keep out the silent majority from having control, when those who have control have demonstrated bad judgment. They are doing things that most sane people, most logical thinking people would just not do. Dividing this country at this time of COVID, in the many ways he did, is not good for the country. Dismantling institutions, attacking the post office, dangling, it's a carrot and stick, and then dangling as a reward tax breaks in front of us so that they become the good guy. Is not enough to distract us from the situation. There's nothing as immediately life-threatening to security like a standing war to detract us from now the double whammy of the what's going on and its impact on the economy and our safety. What a botched situation dividing the country at this time. Had the president unified the country, been a great leader, stepped up to the challenge, been a person for the times, a little less of the lizard brain that rules him, a little less of the pituitary gland being in charge, and the most base alpha male hunter instincts, hyper competitive, hyper macho, in your face, don't care what anyone thinks, because the big man on campus, the most fierce paternal figure, wins, is in our coding and is being relied upon for reasons that come off as intelligence. But ambush predators are intelligent. Nobody's challenging the actual smarts of people like Donald Trump. They're questioning the emotional intelligence, a different kind of intelligence that comes from being colony social mammals, the fuzzy creatures who rely on each other, who allow each other to specialize. And it's a more nurturing intelligence, a more motherly, soft, gentle, blue circle intelligence. Biden, I do believe, is a blue circle. In Eastern philosophy, it's yin and yang, where yin is the maternal, often darker, more stormy, less predictable, but more feminine force, which is in balance with yang, which is the more calm and orderly, disciplined and structured, goal and orient achieved, concrete things, hyper competitive, yang. And so Trump is yang. Trump is as yang as you get. And Biden is yin. And this was absolutely a yin and yang competition to see whether those that can reach out and be embracing and inclusive and to give an optimistic feeling of hope can outmaneuver. There's always a next move. With enough resources and money, a skilled hunter can throw a lot into the next attempt, and even just by doing so, extend the game at least, challenge results, challenge the lack of black and white, the lack of clarity, the lack of a true or false result, and thereby challenging truth itself. The judges, the umpires, are always so put upon by the yang types because their winning comes down to technicalities and rules. Whereas the yin type would more embrace the spirit of the law and appeal to, say, the humanity of judges to, adapt with the times, to be in the spirit of to rule on the side, to make a binary decision based more on the spirit of the law, what they were getting at. So electoral college should be thrown out because it's biased towards smaller states who are generally more plagued by the kind of lizard brain rule that does not do them long-term good. They could use more of the optimism in their life, the healing, the yin spirit, the softer, the more security in their lives, the more accepting release of the serotonin enzyme, neurotransmitter chemical into their body, for the feeling of hearth and home and security to be just generally accepted by more people, and to not have to be into this pumped up state of readiness. It comes down to Athens versus Spartans. There are so many ways of viewing this essential split in humanity between those who live more in the realm of fear and anger and readiness to fight, and more lower level base emotions that come from our pituitary gland and lizard brain limbic system than do come from the higher order brain of social mammals and sentient primates. Peace and love. The awareness that if E equals MC squared, that means we're standing light. We're standing light. We're light that is so tightly packed, because light is energy. E equals MC squared. That E of energy is also light, which at its smallest unit is a single photon particle as far as we understand. So all other elements can be reduced to light particles, and they can go kaboom and release their light. We are indeed vibrations. In case you've ever cast aside as silly one of your friends who ever talked about the vibe of life, people being on each other's waveforms. To be technical, you are the vibration that is, expressed in matter as your unique DNA that is bundled into 22 chromosome pairs taken from your mother and father and passed on in API compatible, clipped together chromosome bundles of DNA that can be spun into random combinations as a way of accelerating an evolutionary process. To accelerate evolution, sex accelerates evolution. Contributing genes from two different lines with lots of trees, with lots of branches on the tree. So sex exists to accelerate evolution. And we, as individuals, exist to continue this process. And if there is any inherent value in all this, it is that the journey is the reward, perchance to hand something down, which will most likely be recorded and preserved for all time as information, because information is what counts. The actual original matter could take on some special sacred meaning and have high monetary value and be exhibits in museums and prized collections, and like totems to self. But they're just what you pack up and take around with you, because you don't really need to pack much for your information. Information condenses very well. And when the information becomes the experience itself, when the recorded information becomes the processor, you have meta systems and you have life like us. And that's what's going on. We are sentient blip nodes on a network of life designed to allow creatures like us to evolve, whether you believe in God or not. It's a fact. We're part of this wacky system that produces stuff like us, and we're probably some of the most privileged stuff like us that exists. And so on that note, I think I will wrap up. I'm an eternal optimist. I am so glad that my lizard brain that had been for all this time telling me to prepare for a second Trump term, because it is inevitable. Most people are ruled by their pituitary gland and not their fuzzy mammal glands. Thank you, all my fellow fuzzy mammals who care about the health of the whole tribe enough to get out there and vote. And I feel this alone is enough reason for me to have moved to Pennsylvania, because I cast my vote in PA. Woohoo! I'm a Pennsylvanian. Gotta still update some stuff with like the DMV and stuff, but I got everything I needed to do in order to vote. And I cast my vote in person in Pennsylvania for the new president of the United States who was announced on this day. The election was called for President-elect Joe Biden on November 7th, 2020, during this crazy experience of ours, whose naming of which too many times will get this video demonetized. So hey, maybe I'll monetize this video. Definitely follow me, subscribe to me, hit that bell or whatever. I don't even know what corners to point to, but this will be the last. This will be the winding down for this video. I hope I made my point. It has something to do with these adventures that happen at coming of age from 6 years old to like 12 years old that my daughter is very much going through. And I am making sure that I am one of the Wizard of Oz characters in her life, not Wonderland characters, because they're all eccentrics and don't seem like they make very good friends. However, I like to think I might be like the Tin Woodman. I am not one of the natural geniuses of this world. I am a user of tools, and a fairly blunt user of tools like Python made by other people. So whereas the Guido Van Rossums of the world are certainly the scarecrows, I'm more like the expert carpenter, the Tin Woodman who can build things they need from time to time, who is also expressed as the carpenter in the Wonderland world. So this character is still somewhat there, complicit to the rulership, because Tin Woodman really likes to rule. Read those other books of Oz. I think I might like to try and narrate the books of Oz. I missed with Addie to her, even though she's too old and too cool for that kind of thing, being the YouTuber that she is. But I got her a wonderful gift for today, and I think I'm going to make the second part of that gift the promise to read to her and with her the rest of the Oz stories, the rest of the books that we haven't read. I'm not going to let that be a patchy blind spot in her memory going, did I read those or not? Because she got parts of different ones. We made the mistake of going out of order. Don't go out of order. Read the Oz books in order. There are lessons built on lessons, built on lessons about the coming of age and the experience of life. So there we leave it off. Happy birthday to you, Addie. Congratulations on 10 successful rotations around the sun. You are now 2 beads into the bracelet. And I'll see you real soon. And don't forget to subscribe. Mwah.